This is the Capitol Rundown.
This race for governor in Michigan has turned into the tortoise and the hare, and the tortoise is making progress.
What we can do and what we have done is help people keep more money in their pockets.
I'll have people say to me, boy, I was lucky. I was able to use my savings to keep it open. So how do we help those people?
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Lauren Thompson. The November election is now just more than 2 weeks away, and the governor's race is heating up at the top of the ticket. This weekend, the Capitol Rundown is here for you with a closer look at each candidate. We sit down with both of them to talk about some of the most pressing issues facing our state. Today, we start with current governor, Democrat Gretchen Whitmer.
4 years ago, this time, ahead of the election, we are mainly focused on fixing the damn roads. I don't think anybody could have seen a pandemic, a deadly school shooting, a kidnapping plot. So much has happened over the last 4 years. Is it possible for you to even choose a toughest moment?
As hard as many of the days have been, in the wake of the Oxford school shooting was maybe some of the personally most challenging times. Gun violence is a uniquely American problem. We have to solve it. It's on us, the adults, to make sure that we've got background checks and red flag laws and safe storage. I can't get our current legislature, to take those actions, but I am determined to make sure we do so that we can keep our kids and teachers and families, give them peace of mind. Our kids deserve the freedom to go to school without fear.
Let's talk about the pandemic. Nobody could predicted that. I mean, unprecedented global pandemic, and it became so political. Do you stand behind your handling of it? Is there anything that you would have done differently looking back now?
We were working fast to save lives, and we can't forget that Detroit, metropolitan Detroit area, was absolutely devastated by this virus early on. Our hospitals were full, our morgues were overrun, we didn't have PPE, so it was a really scary time. Could I go back in a time machine now with everything we know and do some things differently? Absolutely.
Do you have any examples of what you might go back and change if you could?
Well, I think in the early days we thought that the virus transmitted through touch, and so we didn't appreciate how important masks were. Now, had we known that, I'd go back and I'd start making masks.
What do you say to the small business owners, or maybe the mom and pop shops that closed during the pandemic and have not been able to reopen since?
It's horrible. The fact that any of the decisions that were absolutely necessary created that kind of financial uncertainty, it's a tragedy. Alas, we are here. We've created a lot of state programs to help small businesses. We've been really centered on supporting small business because they truly are the lifeblood of our state.
The polling going into this election is showing the two top issues are abortion and inflation. So let's start with inflation. Is there anything that can be done on the state level to help our Michigan families?
What we can do and what we have done is help people keep more money in their pockets, whether it is eliminating the tampon tax for women, whether it is the $400 refunds. Those are measures that we have taken that help people.
Let's talk Proposal 3 now. Do you think that's a good proposal?
I will be voting yes for that, but I'll be very clear that there was an easier solution that I was promoting, which was repealing that 1931 law. For 49 years, Michigan women have had the ability to make the decisions they need to for their health and for their families and for themselves. This is at risk of being ripped away.
And finally, let's talk about the roads.
I traveled our state and I listened to people, and whether it was in Lansing or the Upper Peninsula or in Detroit or anywhere else, people over and over again said, I just need you to fix the damn roads. 13,000 lane miles, over 900 bridges, and there is work being done all across our state.
Well, up next here on the Rundown, it's Tudor Dixon's turn. I also recently sat down with her, hear what she has to say on everything from schools to inflation to abortion when the Capitol Rundown returns. Welcome back. We've heard from Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Now it's time to talk with her challenger, Republican Tudor Dixon. Take a listen as she offers her take on some of the biggest issues facing our state.
I want to start with why you believe that you are the right person to be the next governor and lead our state.
For me, I'm looking at the state as a whole from the standpoint of education, safety, and business. I'm a mom of 4, so I'm walking alongside every other parent who's dealing with what we're dealing with after the crisis, but also I'm someone who's owned small businesses and understand what's going on from a state partnership level with business.
Would you say that's your number one issue, is children and schools?
I feel that's the foundation of our state, and that's the future of our state. So if we're failing our kids, then in 10 years, we're going to see significant results in our workforce, and ultimately it will hurt the state economically as well. We also know that if you have a high illiteracy rate, that can predict your prison population. So from a public safety standpoint, I also think it's key that we get into our schools right now and make sure that those kids that are behind in reading, we have a way to catch them back up.
Right now, there's a lot of money here in Michigan that can be used for school security. So what does that look like for you? How do you think we keep our students safe in the classroom?
Well, we actually have a plan from the state police that came out in 2018. And in fact, some people have said if that plan had been implemented, that Oxford would have looked much different. That plan encompasses not only how to harden our schools and have security there to keep kids safe, but it also talks about mental health. And for me, I look at our state police and say, these are the experts in safety. Take the suggestions that they've already had, and like you mentioned, we have the money there to do it, to harden our schools, but also go after those mental health issues at the same time.
But definitely not, in your opinion, in the form of stricter gun laws.
No, I don't believe in stricter gun laws.
When it comes to small businesses, a lot of them closed during the pandemic. Many never reopened. Others are still struggling today. What is your plan to address that issue here?
Yeah, it's one of the toughest situations because I'll have people say to me, boy, I was lucky. I was able to use my savings to keep it open. So how do we help those people? Because you shouldn't have to take out your life savings to try to save your business. Really, what we can do is reduce costs in the state of Michigan and then reduce regulations so that people can get back up and running fast.
Let's move now. What the polls show the top issues for voters are going into the election, and that's inflation and abortion. Mm-hmm. What can be done here in Michigan to combat inflation or to help families who are struggling right now?
And one of the biggest things we see in the state is rising energy costs. We have to make sure that we protect Line 5.
As far as abortion goes, and Proposal 3, I mean, really anybody who's watching TV right now is seeing the political ads that are drilling you on being no exceptions. Mm-hmm. Is that your stance, no exceptions?
My stance has always been I'm pro-life with exceptions for life of the mother. That has been my stance for as long as I can remember. I was asked about my stance in 2021. This is before the Dobbs decision came out, and that is my stance, and that is very personal for me for personal reasons. But the people of Michigan will decide this. It's on the ballot. And I have said that if this is what the people of Michigan vote on, that I will enforce all the laws. I'm not picking and choosing laws or amendments to say this is what I choose or what I don't choose. That's not my role as governor.
Well, now that you've heard from both of the candidates, it's time to hear from the experts. Up next, we catch up with our Capitol correspondent, Tim Skubic, as he weighs in on the latest happenings on the campaign trail. Stay with us. The Capitol Rundown. We'll be right back. With Election Day drawing closer by the minute, our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic is keeping a close eye on the governor's race, and he sat down with our Kiera Lake to share his thoughts. Take a listen.
It's time to get updated on the political front here in Michigan. So joining us now is Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic. And Tim, what's the latest on the governor's race? Now you're talking about there's a new poll out.
Oh yeah, there's a big new poll out. Stevie Mitchell, who's a pollster, been around for a long time, he is reporting that we have the governor leading by 2 points over Tudor Dixon, which is within the margin of error, which means it is a statistical dead heat. Let me put this in perspective with a story that everybody knows about. This race for governor in Michigan has turned into the tortoise and the hare, and the tortoise is making progress. There have been a couple of polls over the past week that have suggested this race was tightening. Remember, this started with one of the original polls with the governor with a whopping 16-point lead. Well, that is now ancient history. If indeed this polling data is correct, it's a statistical dead heat. It is likely going to generate more money for Tudor Dixon. And I would love to be the fly on the wall in the Whitmer campaign as to what the heck they're going to do about this, because this This is closer than a lot of people thought it would be. Here's what's going on. The governor has steadily been right around, hovering like a helicopter around that magical 50% mark. Ms. Dixon has been stuck at about 38%, but now, all of a sudden, in the wake of that debate performance and some money from the Republican Governors Association, almost $4 million, she is now starting to get some Republicans to, as we say in the biz, come home. And with those numbers, her numbers are going up. The governor is staying stagnant. Do the math. It is a very close race. It's not over yet, but it's something that people in this town did not anticipate. And we always say in politics, you never know what's going to happen. This next debate down in Detroit on October the 25th takes on a whole new dimension. The governor has to make a decision here as to what kind of tack she takes with Tudor Dixon. She basically kind of treated her with kid gloves the other day, just disagreeing, but not in a forceful way. So maybe there's a shift in strategy that the governor takes in this second debate. Tudor Dixon probably just needs to do what she continues to do, which is to pick away at the governor's record, because the picking apparently is working.
All right, Tim, I think that's it for us today. Well, we appreciate you as always.
All right, thanks to both of you. Well, there's a lot more than just candidates on the ballots next month. We're also taking a closer look at the 3 proposals that voters will decide. Prop 1 and Prop 2 are up after the break. Stay with us. The Capitol Rundown. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Along with voting for candidates for multiple public offices, voters will also decide proposals 1, 2, and 3. This weekend, we're taking a closer look at all of them for you. So we start with Proposal 1. Proposal 1 will let voters decide whether to change the term limits for our state lawmakers. It would also require more financial disclosures from our elected officials when it comes to their income, assets, liabilities, future employment agreements, and gifts from lobbyists, among other things.
Some studies rank Michigan either 48th or 50th in terms of openness, accountability, and transparency.
A yes vote would limit a lawmaker's tenure to 12 years in the state legislature, and that could be served in either the House or Senate. Executive leaders like the governor, secretary of state, and attorney general would also be held to the new financial disclosure laws. Now, voting no would keep current term limits in the state. So state lawmakers could serve up to 6 years in the House and 8 years in the Senate for a total of 14 years. And legislators and state executive leaders would not have further requirements to disclose their finances. Proposal 2 involves voting rights, and as you'd imagine, this topic is pretty divisive. So one of those provisions would be to allow voters to sign an affidavit as an alternative to the existing photo ID requirement.
We shouldn't make it even more possible for more questions to be asked. This puts it into our constitution, our state constitution, that you'll never have to show an ID to vote ever again. It's wrong because 80% of Michiganders support requiring an ID to vote with no exceptions. And this does the exact opposite.
The group Promote the Vote says supporting this would allow more people, though, to have a voice.
Your signature is verified twice, right? So you have to, when you apply for your application, you have to put your signature there. City and township clerks review that signature. If it does not match the signature on file, then your application is rejected.
However, those against the proposal say a valid ID is the only way to ensure a legal vote. Now, one of the big concerns before Election Day, though, is misinformation. Last month, a mass text was sent out to thousands of Michigan residents claiming that Prop 2 would make it legal for convicted murderers, rapists, and incarcerated felons to vote. In a 5-2 decision, though, the Michigan Supreme Court has rejected that claim. Well, up next here on the Capitol Rundown, we take a look at perhaps the most polarizing proposal of all. We dive into Proposal 3 when the Capitol Rundown returns. Well, since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the right to an abortion in the state of Michigan has been up in the air. Right now, the courts have blocked a 1931 law on the books that criminalizes abortion. But the fate of it here in Michigan now lies in the hands of voters. If passed, Proposal 3 would enshrine abortion rights into our state's constitution. There's a major debate from both sides of this issue taking place on the airwaves ahead of Election Day. McCoy Scribner is here for you now with a closer look at this divisive issue.
On June 24th, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. the landmark ruling granting a right to an abortion. It's something advocates have wanted for a while.
The Roe versus Wade thing has been an ongoing battle for right to life of Michigan and pro-lifers around the country since 1973.
While others are looking to do something about it. A group called Reproductive Freedom for All says its goal is to give women the freedom to choose. They gathered more than 750,000 signatures, which put Proposal 3 on the ballot for everyone to decide.
Proposal 3 is a citizens-led initiative that would basically and in essence restore the rights that we've had under Roe v. Wade.
Despite how many signatures it received, opponents say the initiative took advantage of the Roe v. Wade ruling and wasn't completely clear when gathering signatures.
So I think that there was a lot of anger and confusion, and people were very upset, and the sponsors of this proposition capitalized on that without really people understanding the full context of this proposal.
They say the full language in the ballot isn't what voters think it is.
So it's very extreme and very far-reaching, and the language was intentionally, in my opinion, very vague in order to be overly broad to encompass a whole host of things that I don't think people realize.
While pro-choice advocates say that's not the case.
I think the ballot language is clear. It is spelled out what our proposal does.
And she says that is to codify the right to reproductive freedom and the right to access all the reproductive health care that Michiganders have been able to access over the course of the last 50 years.
The claims that it is anything other than what it says it is and does is extreme. And it is a fear tactic and a scare tactic to try to trick voters into making abortion illegal.
These two aren't on the same page when it comes to what voters should do, but they're both urging people to go to the polls. Here for you in Lansing, McCoy Scribner, 6 News.
Well, if you're interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, we have just the thing for you. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just one email every week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. This will take you to the sign-up page, or you can head to WLNS.com/newsletters. Well, that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown. We hope to see you back here again next weekend.